Hello and welcome again. We spoke last time of the letters advising police and judicial officers of their circumstances following the coronation oath sworn by Mr. Charles Windsor in the fake coronation ceremony conducted on May the 6th. As we know, there was no lawful Crown authority existing at the time to either conduct that ceremony or to ratify the spurious claims of Mr. Windsor to the throne of England. Nonetheless, millions of people have been deceived by the plot to conceal the invocation of Article 61 of Magna Carta and the lawful nature of the removal of that authority from the population at large. But as George Orwell once pointed out, no matter how well concealed truth may be, and no matter how many people continue to be unaware of it, the truth quietly abides, merely awaiting its exposure to the light of discovery. Which brings us to our topic. It's hoped that many listeners have downloaded and started to send those letters to their local court officials and police chiefs and officers. For those who are hearing about this for the first time, the link to both letters is in the comments box. Let's now go through some of the main points. Beginning with the police version. This begins with an explanation of why a constable's oath is vital. It is in fact the only reason that the people grant to the police the power to act as an enforcer, if required, of the law to which all people agree. There is no lawful application of this power if it serves the interests of one group or individual at the expense of others. It must be applied impartially, without fear or favour. This excerpt underlines the importance of the trial by jury method of administering justice. Note the three main reasons given. 1. The upholding of the rule of law. 2. The principle of individual sovereignty, from which derives the authority of government. And 3. The promotion of transparency and accountability in the administration of law. This letter proceeds to explain the power of the jury to annul unjust legislation, as well as determining the guilt or innocence of the accused. It explains that under the Constitution, any court proceedings without the presence of a jury is unlawful, and participating in such an event against an accused person is a serious crime. Such activities which constitute the suspension of one's conscience in favour of following orders was expressly forbidden at Nuremberg after World War II. The letter goes on to point out the serious nature of a constable breaching their oath by participating in unlawful activities when they have sworn to uphold the law and serve the people. This letter is a powerful reminder that the oath a police officer takes is a sacred commitment, which, if systematically transgressed, makes a mockery of the administration of justice. Furthermore, it renders the officer liable for criminal damages in their personal and unlimited capacity. The letter closes with the admonition to look to one's understanding of the law and a reminder that if there are any false statements contained therein, they must be rebutted within 10 days of receipt of the letter, or failing that, to articulate the specific action the officer has and will be taking to restore the correct and just application of the law in the execution of their office. The letter to the judicial officers is just as, if not more, scathing in its affirmation of the grossness of the violations of law committed should they conduct trials or court proceedings without adhering to the principles contained in Articles 39, 40 and 61 of Magna Carta, our primary constitutional document. I cannot stress highly enough the value of studying these letters, that we take into our very souls the importance of the administrators of law behaving in a moral and lawful manner. It is everyone's duty to strive to ensure that the principles which underlie our system are followed with full commitment. If we do not, then miscarriages of justice become the norm rather than the exception. This is what has happened over the past several hundred years. Until now, we have a system that is so corrupt that most people have no idea of how it is supposed to operate, or what we should be striving to establish, or even what law is. Most people think legislation is law, and starting from that viewpoint, it is extremely difficult for them to envisage any other way of the justice system operating. But this task must be completed, lest we sink inexorably into the mire of a Roman-style corporate dictatorship. Let's now consider some of the implications of these oaths that police officers swear. They swear to the monarch, not the Governor-General, the Prime Minister, or any other public servant, that they will faithfully uphold the King's peace amongst the people, without fear or favour, malice or ill will. In return, the people grant them the right to administer the law, using force if it should prove necessary. This trust placed in them is their only licence to use this power. There is no other. Thus, if a police officer initiates the use of violence against a Crown subject in any other circumstances than the prevention or apprehension after the event of a crime, they commit a crime themselves by violating their sworn oath and transgressing against the subject's inalienable rights. Smashing car windows, dragging people forcefully from their vehicles, and unlawfully arresting them for the simple act of asking the officer to identify the source of their alleged authority literally qualifies that officer as a domestic terrorist. Why? Because they are armed, and that fact is sufficient to terrorise the victim, who, when seeing an officer of the law behaving like a thug, may reasonably suspect that serious injury or even death, if the officer degenerates further out of control, is a possibility. A subject is perfectly within their rights to question a sworn law officer, who is only their equal before the law, as to the source of their authority and the lawfulness of their actions. Should the officer fail to respond in a peaceful and respectful manner, the subject has every reason to question whether it is actually a genuine police officer or merely someone dressed up as one. A constable's office, with its badge, gun and costume, does not give them the right to do anything above and beyond what they are allowed to do when they are not dressed for duty. They are bound by the same restrictions as apply to everyone else, unless they can justify evidentially the excuse to exercise their authority. Any action they take under that office must be justified according to law, which in turn means that anyone they approach must be presumed to be innocent of any offence unless they are literally observed committing that offence, which evidence must later be confirmed before a jury of the accused's peers in a lawful court. There is no right to inflict arbitrary punishment on anyone, unless, of course, that one is attempting to injure the officer or evade lawful detention. So what does it mean when a police officer does commit such offences, as we now see occurring daily in videos or even on the mainstream media? It means that they are committing war crimes. They are terrorising a population by the illicit threat or execution of violence against unarmed victims. Since we also know that they have no lawful authority in the absence of Crown authority, they commit treason against the very people they have sworn to protect. We need to get this information out to as many people as possible, so that everyone comes to know of their rights and when they are being infringed. I urge anyone who personally knows or has contact with a police officer, or a judicial officer to send this video to that person. Challenge them to sit and watch it with their teenage son or daughter and ask them what would be their answer to their child's question. Is it true what that man's saying, Dad? That you don't have true authority and are breaking the law when you enforce fines or punishment on people in court when that court is not set up properly? Will your, speaking now to the relevant officers, response be, no, he's lying, or I'm not 100% sure and I can't be bothered to find out if it's true or not? Would those answers satisfy your conscience, officer of the law? Or are you satisfied that your child's esteem of you would rise with such responses? Remember that no matter how long it's been hidden, the truth is always waiting to be exposed, and with it, our level of integrity and decency with respect to that truth. Currently, the evidence is that our police forces are not servants of the people they swore to trust, but instead are policy enforcers for private for-profit corporations and are content to just follow orders of their paymasters, who only operate under the colour of law, entirely without lawful authority, and are thus criminals themselves. Here are some points to ponder, police and judicial officers. Some of you will remember Nicolae Ceausescu, dictator of communist Romania, for a few decades until the execution of he and his wife on Christmas Day 1989. Those who don't know could ask your elder officers, or better still, look up the story yourselves. Ceausescu's government became increasingly oppressive as his economic policies left the people basically destitute, with people risking their lives to flee the country. Mass demonstrations against him built up until on December the 17th, he ordered military forces to open fire, killing and injuring many. Once it became known that Ceausescu himself was responsible, the demonstrations became irresistible, and he and his wife were captured by the military attempting to flee in a helicopter. After being tried and convicted of economic sabotage and genocide, they were immediately executed by firing squad. Why am I telling this story? Because that is the road down which police and judicial officers who deliberately violate their oaths and the universal code of morality which upholds human civilization are travelling. People don't need guns to overthrow oppression. Once there are enough people who know the truth, governing them becomes impossible without their consent. Law officers acting as those in Australia and other Commonwealth countries are doing are running headlong into a lawful cul-de-sac, at the end of which comes their political and in many cases physical demise. Ask yourselves why it is that no one has ever succeeded in establishing a global dictatorship. It's because it is against the laws of nature for a species to survive while denying its true nature and struggling to live in opposition to the truth. It simply can't be done. Reality cannot be evaded, and the reality is that humans have to live as free entities. As law officers, your only real questions are, how much damage am I prepared to inflict before the inevitable backlash and punishment rebound on me? And how long will it be before my senior officers see the writing on the wall and, like Ceausescu's military, seek to save their own necks? Will they be content with arresting their political paymasters? Or will they decide to throw some of the grunts under the bus first? Think about it, officers. You have less time than you think before Australia's Ceausescu moment arrives. You can still recapture the hearts and minds of most of the decent people of this country if you start honouring your oaths and calling to account those who are giving you their immoral, unlawful orders. Start talking amongst yourselves. That's the tip. Thank you for watching.